How are you guys doing? Today is Wednesday, April 27th, 2022. I'm James Sims, and for this episode of The Elite, I'm going to do an elite individual profile on Corey Seager. The elite shortstop for the Texas Rangers is turning 28, and my intention is, of course, to zoom in and look at how he's been able to affect the game of baseball, of course, on a micro level for his team and for his organization, game in and game out. But I'm also going to zoom out and look at how his impact on the game on a macro level is a big part of the reason why I consider him as one of the elite baseball players in 2022. And of course, I go into my spiel every time about how there's hundreds of thousands of people that are competing for a very few finite amount of spots. To even get up to where he is in the MLB and be this good amongst the league's best, I think is something that's really noteworthy. And he's just a player that's had a serious impact on his team. And I have no doubt that it'll take a second, but once he gets rolling, the Texas Rangers are going to be very glad that they picked him up. If you're unfamiliar with Corey Seager, he is a left-hand hitting shortstop, and I say that because, of course, to be an infielder, you have to throw right-handed. You don't really see that many times where people, bat left and then throw right. But he is just one of those players, and I do think that he's been a player that's had such a big impact on the Dodgers since he's gotten there. And I would say most of his career up until right now has been with the Dodgers. He just got signed by the Texas Rangers. He's a great defensive player, of course, and not to mention he is a player that's won the Silver Slugger a couple times as well. He is a World Series MVP as well, not to mention a National League Championship Series MVP. But I digress. Going back, he's originally from Charlotte, North Carolina. His older brother, Kyle Seager, actually plays for the Seattle Mariners at the moment. He had a middle brother who was eventually drafted. And then Corey Seager himself would go on to be selected with the 18th overall pick out of high school in the 2012 MLB draft by the Dodgers. Looking at other players that were taken in that draft, that was when Carlos Correa was taken with the number 1 overall pick out of high school. Other players, notable players, Max Fried was taken out of high school with the 7th overall pick by the Padres, and he just won a championship with the Braves. Marcus Stroman was taken about 5 picks after him or about 4 picks after Corey Seager out of Duke. Not to mention Jose Barrios, Joey Gallo, Lance McCullers Jr., Matt Olson, and Jesse Winker were all first-round picks in that star-studded 2012 MLB draft to get a sense of the talent that Corey Seager came out with. However, Corey Seager would, after coming out of high school, it would take him a second to make it to the league. He would go on to make his debut in baseball in his age 21 season in 2015. And of course, to even make it that young is really a feat in itself. In what was not his official rookie year, but which was his debut season, he would go on to play 27 games for a Los Angeles Dodgers team who would go on to win the NL West. At that time, they had won it for the 3rd year in a row. And within that season, he would go on to finish with 33 hits in those 27 games, more hits than games played. Of course, I kind of like to look at that. He would go on to finish with 8 doubles on the year, and he would have 4 home runs alongside 17 RBIs in those 27 games. He had a 337 batting average, and he would have a total 986 OPS, which is actually higher than any that he would put up in a full season, just to get a sense of how good his first taste of baseball was. Once the Dodgers would make the playoffs that year, they would go on to lose in the divisional series to the Mets, as the Mets would go all the way to the World Series to lose to the Kansas City Royals this year. But that would be just his first taste. But his rookie season would be his age 22 season in 2016. And many would consider this one of his best seasons, if not his best. But in his rookie season, all the way back then, he will go on to play 157 games for a Los Angeles Dodgers team that would win the NL West for the 2nd year in a row. This would be the year where Dave Roberts would win the Manager of the Year, and Corey Seager would go on to win the Rookie of the Year award in the National League. He would finish with 193 hits in the 157 games he played. His 193 hits are by far the most hits he's ever had in a season, and And of course, he will go on to finish with 36 more hits than games played. He had 105 runs. That's the only season in which he's been able to put together 100 runs in a season. He would put together 40 doubles in a season. That'll be the first time that he did that. He would finish with 5 triples. It's the only time in his career he's put up 5 triples. He finished with 26 home runs, which is a career high. He would finish with 72 RBIs, which is the third most he's ever put up in a season. He finished with a 308 batting average. That is the highest batting average he finished an entire season with. That wasn't his debut season. He would go on to finish with an 877 OPS as he had a 365 on-base percentage, and his slugging percentage was 512. That'll be the first season that he would put together a season with a 500 slugging percentage. His on-base percentage was about 34 points better than the average player. So his OPS plus was 134. If you didn't understand that stat, now you do. He would go on to be named an All-Star as well in his rookie season. He was given his very first Silver Slugger award, and as a rookie for the Dodgers, he would finish third in MVP voting this year, as the MVP went to Chris Bryant. He was the MVP of the Dodgers this season. As I remember, I lived in LA this season. Everybody was in love with Corey Seager, but following this 2016 season, the Dodgers would go on to make it to the playoffs. They would beat the Nationals in the National League Division Series. They would go on to lose to the Cubs 4-2 in 2016. That was right before the Cubs would go on to beat the Cleveland Indians 4-3 in the 2016 World Series. But following that, that'll be Corey Seager's first taste of at least like a deep playoff run, or at least winning a playoff series. His second full season would be his age 23 season in 2017. He would go on to play 145 games in a season where the LA Dodgers would finish with a 104-58 record. They would go on to win the NL West for the 5th year in a row, and it would be the first time that the LA Dodgers have won 100 games in a season since the 1970s. It would be the first time they had won that many games in a season since 1953, when they were the Brooklyn Dodgers, when Roy Campanella was the MVP, just to get a sense of how historic this season was. This would also be the year that Cody Bellinger would win the Rookie of the Year. In this season, Corey Seager would be named an All-Star for the second year in a row, and he has not been named an All-Star since 2017. He was also named a Silver Slugger, as he has not been named a Silver Slugger since. In the 145 games he played, he would finish with 159 hits. That's 14 more hits than games played, as he finished with 85 runs on the year. He finished with 33 doubles, making it the second year in a row he's had at least 30 of them, which is a very tough feat to do. He finished with 22 home runs alongside 77 RBIs. He would have more RBIs in his rookie season. He would finish with a 295 batting average, which was about 13 points lower than it was his rookie year. He would finish with an 854 OPS, as he would have a higher on-base percentage, but his slugging percentage would dip below 500. He would go on to finish 17th in MVP voting that year. But once again, like I said, he was named the Silver Slugger at the end of the year. And once the Dodgers would make it to the playoffs, they would end up sweeping the Diamondbacks in the division series. They would go on to beat the Cubs in the championship series by 5 after the Cubs had beat them the year before, and that's while the Cubs were the defending champs. They would go on to the World Series and lose in 7 games to the Astros. It later came out that the Astros cheated, but they eventually would still get immunity from their deal. So the Astros would, of course, walk away with that championship, but that would be the first time that Corey Seager, as a player, would sniff the World Series. Following that 2017 season, he would return to the LA Dodgers for his age 24 season. He would only play 26 games in a season in which he had to get Tommy John surgery after he was diagnosed with a strain in the ulnar collateral ligament in his right elbow. And in those 26 games, he would go on to finish with 27 hits. He kind of sang out of most of the action. He had a 267 batting average and a 744 OPS, just 3 points better than the average player. But in the season that he missed, the LA Dodgers would go on to win the National League West for the 6th year in a row, as they finished with a 92-71 record. They had 12 less wins than the previous year. Once they made the playoffs, they would go on to beat the Atlanta Braves in the National League Division Series. in 4. They would go on to beat the Brewers in 7 in the championship series, and then they would go on to lose in the World Series to the Boston Red Sox. This is the same season in which Mookie Betts will go on to win the MVP on that side as well. But of course, following Corey Seager's injury season, he would come back for his 4th year with the LA Dodgers in his age 25 season in 2019. He would play 134 games in a season in which the Dodgers would finish with a 106-56 record. This would be the second time in a 3-year stretch that they had over 100 wins. So this is a very good Dodgers team, as this would be the year they had won it for the 7th year in a row. He would go on to strain his hamstring, so he missed about a month or so of the season combined. But in those 34 games, he would finish with 133 hits. That's 1 less hits than games played on the year. He still had his 84 runs. He would go on to lead the National League in doubles. That would be the only time he's actually led the National League in a statistical category. He had 44 of them for the year. That's the second time that he would eclipse 40 and the third time that he would eclipse 30. He finished with 19 home runs on the year. He would finish with a career-high 87 RBIs as well. He would go on to finish with a 272 batting average alongside an 817 OPS. And once that season came, like I said, he missed over a month of the season, but he still led the league in He led the National League in doubles, and he had a career high in RBIs. So I think that this is, of course, another feather in his cap season, even though he wasn't named an All-Star. At the end of the 2019 season, the Dodgers would actually end up losing in the divisional series to the eventual World Series champs, Washington Nationals, making it the 4th year in a row that they would end up losing to the eventual World Series champs in the playoffs. And then, of course, this streak would end in the 2020 season, which would be Corey Seager's age 26 season in his 5th season with the team, and that is, of course, including his injury season and not including his debut season. And if you're familiar with the 2020 season, because of COVID, they had to shorten the 162-game season to 60 games for every team. And because of that, they had to expand the playoffs just for this year alone. But for the 2020 season, Corey Seager would play 52 of the LA Dodgers 60 games in a season where the Dodgers finished with the best record in the National League. They finished with a 43-17 record, as they had the best record in the MLB, I believe. They would finish with the best record in the National League West for the 8th year in a row. And they would see Corey Seager finish with 65 hits in the 52 games he played. That'll be 13 more hits than games played. He had 38 runs on the year. He finished with 12 doubles in 52 games. He had 15 home runs alongside 41 RBIs. He finished with a 307 batting average, which was just a little tick below what he did as a rookie. Not to mention that he finished with a 358 on-base percentage and a slugging percentage of 585. His 585 slugging percentage during the quarantine year is the highest that he's ever put together in a season. And not to mention that he would go on to even finish in the top 10 of MVP voting. They didn't even name All-Stars this year, so they probably would have named him one this year. But he would be a really big part of helping the Dodgers make it to the playoffs this year. In 2020, they would go on to make the playoffs as one of the favorites. They would go on to sweep the Brewers in the first series. They won that series 2-0. They would go on to beat the Padres 3-0 in the National League Division Series. Now, once they made it to the National League Championship Series, he would go on to help them beat, or I guess once they made it to the Championship Series, they would beat the Braves in 7, as the Braves they actually held the advantage in this series, but the Dodgers would have to come from behind and help them win. In the 7 games he played, he would go on to finish with 9 hits for the entire series. He had a couple of doubles, 5 home runs, and 11 RBIs stretched over 7 games is very tough to argue against. He would be a very big part in helping the Dodgers claw their way out of their hole and go to the World Series. And once they made it to the World Series, they would go on to beat the Tampa Bay Rays, who had the best record in the American League. They beat the Rays in 6. In those 6 games, Corey Seager would have 8 hits. He would have 2 home runs and 5 RBIs, as he would also be walked 6 times. He had a 400 batting average, and with an OPS of 1,200 for both the NLCS and the World Series. It would not be a surprise to a lot of people as to why Corey Seager won the MVP in both those rounds. He was a very big part in the LA Dodgers winning their first World Series title since 1988, the first time they've won it in my lifetime. And considering I've lived there and I know people that rep the Dodgers, I know that was a very big part. That was a very big moment for the city. And Corey Seager was a very elite. He played a very elite contribution to that team winning. Even though, of course, the season would have been seen by many as a lost season because the NBA or the MLB players played 100 less games than they would have in a regular season. But still, congrats to Corey Seager for doing what he could in those games. And following that season, this would lead to Corey Seager's sixth and final full season with the LA Dodgers, which would be his age 27 season in 2021. He would go on to play 95 games in a season where the Dodgers finished at a 106-56 record. Corey Seager would go on to be, as he was hit by a pitch, he would have to miss a couple of games, but as he fractured his right hand. But still, in the 95 games that he played, he would go on to finish with 108 hits in those games. That's 13 more hits than games played, keeping up that streak. That would be the second year in a row that he did that. He would go on to finish with 22 doubles on the season, 3 triples, 16 home runs, and 57 RBIs in that shortened season. He still finished with a batting average of 306. His 394 on-base percentage is actually the highest on-base percentage that he's recorded since he's been a rookie. And he would go on to finish with a 521 slugging percentage. This would be the third full season in his career that his slugging percentage was over 500. His OPS was 915, the second time in his career that he's played at least a full-ish season in which it was at least 900. Not to mention that he would go on to help the Dodgers make it to the playoffs with the second best record in the National League West, which effectively ended their streak of winning the National League West at 8 straight seasons, as Seager was a part of 6 of them. And once they would make it to the playoffs, they would go on to beat the Cardinals in the National League Wild Card Series. They would go on to beat the Giants in the division series 3-2, and they would end up losing in the National League Championship Series to the eventual World Series champs Atlanta Braves. But that is how Corey Seager's season, of course, would end. Of course, he would leave the Dodgers as a 2-time All-Star, World Series champ, a World Series MVP, not to mention a Rookie of the Year for the team as well. And following his 6 seasons with the Dodgers, he most recently signed a deal to play with the Texas Rangers, a 10-year deal worth $325 million. And to all those haters that are out there wondering why he got paid that much, you can probably rewind it to really any point of this video. But now he is in this new contract. He's in this new situation. And of course, with baseball, it takes a second to really get accustomed to your new team. But as of right now, as of Corey Seager's 28th birthday, he has currently played 16 games for a Texas Rangers squad that at this moment is holding the worst record in the American League West. They're sitting at 6-11. They've won 6 of their last 10 games as they sit 5 games behind the division-leading Seattle Mariners at the moment. In those 16 games, Seager has 17 hits. He has a double on the year and even a home run alongside 9 RBIs. He's holding a 258 batting average, a 306 on-base percentage, a 318 slugging percentage, which of course he's going to get up. So right now his OPS is sitting at about 624 as he's still trying to get figured out. Because I think another thing that people don't notice is that, going from the National League to the American League means that you're dealing with a completely new league of hitters. So I think he has to get that whole situation figured out. I think this year could be a little slow. I'll be very surprised, and I wouldn't be surprised. Actually, I wouldn't be surprised if he was able to figure out these American League pitchers within a season, but I wouldn't be surprised at the same time if it took him a second to get adjusted to being in a whole new league. But I think that from here on out, I think that Corey Seager has proven that he is a player that we can count, that at least that I can count on, at least being able to watch and make sure that he's going to be able to. He's definitely a player that you can't count out. He's a very good two-way player, and I can't wait to see how the second stage of his career is going to unfold in Arlington, as he hasn't even played 20 games there yet. I want to thank the ESPN, the MLB, and the Pro Baseball Reference websites for giving me all the stats and figures that I need. I do, of course, want to wish Corey Seager a happy 28th birthday. And if you ever get a chance to watch him, he's wearing number 5 for the Texas Rangers. Thanks for listening. I hope all is well, and I'll catch you with another piece right after this. And this is The Elite. I want to thank everyone for listening, and I'll catch you with more. Peace out.